Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. There was an article in Scientific American today on August 15th, and the title of it is called NASA's UFO Study Isn't Really Looking for Space Aliens. Okay, now it was recently announced by NASA that this government organization was going to be conducting its own UFO study. And it was only going to spend $100,000 on it, and it was going, basically it's going to have some scientists study some UAP and to try to come up with a determination as to what some of these things are. Now, this article that appeared in Scientific American by Sarah Scholes basically suggests that NASA's not interested in what it said it's really going to do. Basically, what, according to Sarah Scholes, they're more interested in trying to unearth other phenomena, more natural phenomena, more like aurora borealis type phenomena, strange things in the sky like that. I'm not going to read this whole article. It's pretty lengthy, but I'm going to give you the gist of it, and I'll read some sections of it. But it basically starts off talking about a Calgary physicist, Eric Donovan, who came across some pictures of a strange aurora type imagery, strange things in the sky, and it was something that he investigated, and because he couldn't figure out what it was, and it turned out to be some sort of natural phenomena. This article here, written by this science writer, basically suggests that's what the whole gist of this whole NASA UFO study is going to entail. Basically looking at images like this and coming up with, so basically not what a lot of people think it is. They're not going to basically look at UFOs and that they're not thinking about aliens or anything like that. Actually, Scholes refers to people that believe that kind of stuff as extremists, basically. And we're going to get into that in a minute, but I just want to read a little bit of this article. It says here, in early June, spurred by a series of highly publicized UFO sightings documented by United States military personnel, NASA announced that it was initiating a modest study of unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP. For nearly a year and on a relatively meager total budget of circa $100,000, 8 to 12 experts will work on the UAP independent study. Its goal is to identify data, information that has already been gathered or that could be in the future from NASA and outside organizations, and analysis techniques that might advance the scientific understanding of UAP. Both NASA and the scientists leading the study, Princeton University astrophysicist and Simons Foundation president David Spergel, declined to comment for this story. But no official responses or endorsements are needed to affirm the obvious. The huge volumes of data from NASA's sprawling network of past and present Earth observation satellites could be a treasure trove for UAP research. One would be mistaken, however, to think this could only impact sci-fi tinged searches for patrolling alien spacecraft. Quite the contrary. By seeking to flag anomalous, unexplained occurrences in NASA's data, scientists are at least as likely to discover new, exotic but earthly, atmospheric phenomena as they are to find any credible evidence of extraterrestrial visitors, especially if they also can leverage ground sightings from the general public, as Donovan ultimately did. And basically what they're talking about this, from earlier in that article about this guy Donovan who did some investigation into this aurora phenomenon and came up with an answer. But again, this is written by a science writer, and this science writer, a lot of people who read Scientific American, for the most part, I would imagine a lot of these people have closed minds with regard to extraterrestrials. Looking into extraterrestrials, it just seems too far-fetched and outrageous to these people, to the mainstream science in general. And it's basically what's happening here. I'm going to just explain something here. Now, whatever NASA is doing, okay, basically, one thing I do agree here is that, it's only $100,000. I've brought this up before. $100,000 to do scientific research is nothing. Nothing. $1 million would be nothing. I mean, you need you need $100 million to do a serious investigation in the UFOs. And I got to tell you right now, NASA's not going to do that. But they do already have stuff that they could look at. There's images and stuff that, you know, that have unexplained things in it. And maybe they will find some Aurora type stuff, phenomena that they might be able to determine what it's all about. Okay, I understand where they're coming from there, atmospheric kind of things. But see, the problem here is that mainstream scientists, and this is something that's always been like this in mainstream science, always, you go back in the history books, right? You read about, you know, there was a time where, you know, when the idea that, you know, germs could cause infections, you know, and a lot of doctors and scientists, it just wasn't accepted. It took a long time. It was a big fight. You know, like these days, I mean, it goes without saying. I mean, if you're going to get operated on, the doctor's going to be, you know, washing his hands or her hands and putting on gloves. I mean, it's going to be, you know, there's going to be a lot of different cautions taken to make sure that no germs are on a doctor's hands that could be introduced into say a wound. But there was a time where a lot of scientists and doctors just did not accept. They did not want to believe that. They were set in their ways. They were set in their ways when it was brought up to their attention that, hey, germs could, you know, if you're going to do an operation on somebody, you got to clean your hands, because if you have germs on your hands, you could get germs into that cut or that wound, right, and cause an infection and make matters even worse. And even after they were told this, a lot of them fought against it. A lot of scientists said, no, that's no. Well, we know what we're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. It took time for that reality to finally be accepted. That's the same thing that's going on here. I mean, if you read this article, I'll leave the link for it here. You need to read the whole thing. They actually bring up the Condon report from the 1960s. That was basically the Condon report. For a lot of people out there, you probably already know this. In a nutshell, basically what happened in 1966, and we just talked about this recently, the Michigan UFO sighting, where like more than 100 people saw this flying saucer. There was all kinds of evidence for a flying saucer. And then Project Blue Book came in, and J. Allen Hynek, you know, the scientific advisor for Blue Book, told the residents there, actually under pressure apparently from people in the Pentagon, Hynek said, "Oh, it's just swamp gas." That's my professional opinion, and a lot of people were outraged by this, and so the Air Force used this as a method to try to, okay, you know what, we're sick of this UFO investigation business that we're into here. We don't want to be wasting our time or resources on something if there's nothing to it. You know, basically that was what they tried to say. So they sought out a college, right? To do a study on this, and so they got the University of Colorado, Boulder, to look in this, and it was headed by Edward Condon. Okay, now Condon, going into this study in the late 60s, he already had a preconceived notion about extraterrestrials. The only reason that he wanted to do this in Colorado, the University of Colorado wanted to do it, was to get them funding that the Air Force was putting forward for this, right? So they did this, and they had already a preconceived notion. He already knew what the determination was going to be at the end, that there's nothing to this. There's nothing at all to this, right? So they went forward with the investigation, and when it was over, they came out with this big report. And even though there was a whole giant percentage of cases that were unexplained and obvious, required more scientific investigation, Condon concluded that there's nothing to it, and there's no reason to waste your time on this anymore. So that's when basically the Air Force got out of the business of investigating UFO reports that came from the public. And it's mentioned in this article. And it states here, I just want to, and again, the tone of this, okay, let me read this to you. But alas, the historical output of UFO research has not been promising. Consider the sobering conclusion reached by a controversial 1960s government-funded study of UFO sightings led by Edward Condon of the University of Colorado, Boulder. Nothing has come from the study of UFOs in the past 21 years that has added to scientific knowledge, Condon wrote. Further extensive study of UFOs probably cannot be justified in the expectation that science will be advanced thereby. So, see, Condon, even though a lot of the people that were part of this study, a lot of the scientists, they didn't feel this way. That should not have been the conclusion according to them. But since Condon was ahead of this, and the Air Force didn't want to, the Air Force was trying to get out of the UFO investigating business, right? For as at least as far as the public was concerned, they wanted to get rid of Blue Book. That it was a preconceived. It was all, and it stayed that way for a long time. Basically, after that, the Air Force would always stay, like in the 70s, 80s, the Air Force would say, well, yeah, we did a study in it. The scientists said there was nothing to it. That was the conclusion, even though that really wasn't the conclusion. It was a bogus conclusion. And here we are today, right? Now you have the military, the Pentagon, coming out and talking about all sorts of unidentified objects that they can't explain, including transmedium objects. And here we still have the science community, the mainstream science community, talking like there's nothing to investigate. There's nothing like that's what see, to me, these are the same types of people. We talk about this a lot. The same types of people that didn't want to wash their hands, back in the day when they were told that that germs on their hands, bacteria could get inside of a wound and cause infection. They're the same kinds of people today. This is what it's always this way. They don't want to change their way. They're set in. It's all set in stone. It's actually, to me, it's basically, to me, these people are juvenile. They have a juvenile mentality. Other people, there's a small population of scientists who want to come out with and study this, and they are studying this. There's the Galileo project. There's UAPX, in addition to this NASA study, which may or may not be helpful. I mean, again, it's only $100,000. But there are some serious investigations. Apparently, I would say that the Galileo project seems like it's something serious. UAPX seems like it's something serious. You have people at Skinwalker Ranch doing some investigations for a long time now, trying to figure things out. But again, the people that like this science writer and the mainstream scientists in general, they have a juvenile approach to this, right? They don't want to look into things that they don't have a lot of evidence for, right? I understand that, but at the same time, there is evidence. There's tons of different kinds of evidence that they just seem to ignore. They just pretend doesn't exist. There's all the landing trace evidence from when they land. The physical trace evidence when these things land. They don't investigate that. They're not investigating cattle mutilations, which many times, right? I don't know how many times. There's not only are the cattle mutilated, but there's UFOs seen in the area. Okay, they don't want to investigate that. They don't want to come to any conclusions on that. The conclusion would be obviously that there's something doing this that knows what it's doing, right? I mean, these things are, cut with laser precision and things like that. And then there's the abduction. I mean, a lot of scientists don't want to talk about alien abduction. It just seems too far-fetched to them to even go near. But again, at some point in the future, these mainstream scientists are going to look like the same mainstream scientists of the past that didn't want to wash their hands, right, before they did any operation. Again, these people, they don't have the mental maturity, right? That's what they like. I feel, even though I'm not a scientist, right, I feel like I have a mature mental expressional infrastructure, right, more so than some of these people. They just can't. They don't want to, they just want to close their eyes and put the blinders on and act like a bunch of idiots over this. I mean, articles like this just get you angry, because it just goes to show you that these people just don't. They just don't want to look. They don't want to. I mean, okay, yeah, that's great. If NASA is only going to look at for aurora type phenomenon, okay. Then why don't you just say that? I mean, and we're talking about solid objects. We're talking about the things that the military is talking about here, right? Now, I don't know. Again, NASA didn't comment for this person, and this is probably the reason why, because they're going to spin it in the way they want to. The Scientific American is going to spin it in the way they want to, because the kind of people that are reading these things are sitting back, in their nice little studies, wearing smoking jackets with a crest on it, and one of those fez caps, with their reading glasses and a fire in the background, and $10 million in the bank. That's what kind of people are reading this, and they don't believe in any of this stuff, and they just want to keep science where it's at. Right, that's what they're trying to do. They're juveniles. They have a juvenile mentality. They don't have their mentality. To them, the idea of extraterrestrial visitation, extraterrestrials here, a presence here, it's to them, right? It's subversive. It's just too subversive to them, and it's beyond what they know, and they don't want to look into it. They don't want to shake things up and try to get answers to this. So they after all these years, even after late 1968, I believe the Condon report was finished, right? And then Blue Book closed in 69, something like that, late 60s. All this time, we still have mainstream science throwing this kind of garbage out there to try to make it look like. And actually, she does in this article. She does mention somewhere here about, basically that anybody who wants to look into the possibility that it's extraterrestrials, that's extreme. They're extreme UFO investigators. And that's not what we're talking about here. We're more level-headed here. We want to take things, we don't like that. We don't want to look into that kind of stuff. We don't believe, basically it comes from the stance basically that they're coming from here is one of, they don't believe any of this stuff. Basically let's look at this. 100% of all the data of collected since at least 1947, all the UFO sightings, all of the UFO landing reports, right? All of the alien abductions, thousands, tens of thousands alien abduction stories, right? All of that, right? Everything, all the cattle mutilations, right? They're going to sit back and say, basically 100% of that could be explained. Well, where's the explanations? There are none. You don't give any credible explanations. We get bogus explanations, and they don't even actually provide explanations for a lot of them because they don't want to look into it. These people are cowards. They're lazy, and they're like, again, juvenile. They're coming from a juvenile standpoint. These people are not, the scientists that take the chances, right? They're the brave ones. Always remember that. It's the mainstream scientists, right? They're the ones that they'll fight against any kind of change to the reality that they're used to, right? They don't want to go there. It's like that's how they feel about it, because that's, to them, right? It's they just think it's foolish. Like they're so set in their ways, right? And that's what it is. They're set in their ways, and they're conditioned. There's a lot of things that cause this, that have brought, that they are like this, why they are like this. A lot of reasons for it, and that's what it is. And I tell you. Read this article. It's interesting. Again, this person's seems like a good science writer to me. It's well written and everything like that, and no problems there. It's just the way it's presented, the tone of it. They're just looking for mundane things. Oh, maybe that's all they'll find, mundane things, because they only have $100,000 anyhow, right? How far is that going to go? $100,000. That's nothing. But at the same time, at least it's, you would think it's something. You think they would try to figure out some of these objects rather than just looking at some new Aurora Borealis type phenomena. That's okay. If that's what they're suggesting, I don't know if they know that for a fact. Then again, that could be all made up. It could be wishful thinking on her part, on Skoll's part, right? Because NASA didn't respond. Right, NASA didn't provide any comments, so I don't know how she came to this conclusion. Again, maybe that's but it's written in a way that seems authoritative, right? It's not authoritative. Again, these people, they have a set way of thinking. To them, anyone who believes in extraterrestrials here on Earth, or that UFOs, some UFOs, not all UFOs, but some UFOs, I believe, there's no question, right, are operated by beings that are not human, right? That's too extreme to go there, even though it's the reality. But they don't want to go there. They don't want to look at that. It's too much for them.